pattern started when I was 12. Mom would return from her boutique consulting firm meetings with glossy folders and expensive leather portfolios, spreading financial projections across our dining table. "This is adult business, Emma," she'd say whenever I asked questions. "Why don't you go practice your piano?" By 16, I taught myself everything about venture capital, private equity, and growth investments through library books and early internet forums. I never mentioned it at home. When I got accepted to Wharton's finance program with a full scholarship, Mom's response was lukewarm. "Business school is fine, dear, but don't expect to compete with people who grew up understanding money." She meant herself. She meant my sister Claire, who was getting her MBA at a less competitive program but whom Mom praised constantly. I graduated top of my class at 22. By 25, I'd made my first million through careful tech startup investments. By 28, I had $47 million in carefully diversified holdings. I lived modestly in a small apartment, drove a 10-year-old Honda, and never mentioned any of it to my family. Mom's business, Sterling Consulting Group, had grown steadily over the years. She'd started it when I was 8. Building it from a one-woman operation to a firm with 35 employees. She spoke about it constantly, her revenue growth, her client acquisitions, her expansion plans. At family dinners, business talk dominated every conversation. "We're projecting $12 million in revenue this year," Mom announced at my 30th birthday dinner, barely acknowledging the cake in front of me. "The board is extremely pleased with our growth trajectory." "That's wonderful, Mom," I said quietly. Claire jumped in immediately. "Mom's been networking with potential investors. We might raise Series B funding next quarter." Claire had joined Mom's firm after her MBA, taking a senior vice president role she hadn't quite earned through merit alone. "Emma, you should pay attention to this," Mom said, turning to me with that patronizing smile I knew so well. "This is how real business works. Not those little online stock trades you do." I managed a modest investment portfolio as a senior analyst at a respected firm, making $160,000 a year. To my family, this was adorable amateur hour compared to Mom's entrepreneurial empire. What they didn't know was that 3 years earlier, when Mom's company had faced a severe cash flow crisis, her bank had quietly approached several private investors. The firm needed $95 million to avoid collapse, to cover an aggressive expansion that had overextended their credit lines and operating capital. I'd been the anonymous investor who provided that $95 million through a complex network of LLCs and investment vehicles. The terms were generous, just 8% annual return, no board seat, complete anonymity. I'd structured it specifically to save Mom's business without her ever knowing her amateur investor daughter had rescued her life's work. For 3 years, I'd watched her company thrive on my capital, watched her take credit for the turnaround, watched her lecture me about business acumen I'd demonstrated by saving her. The Thanksgiving gathering at Mom's house was elaborate as always. 42 family members crowded into her professionally decorated home. The dining table could barely contain the catered feast. Mom held court at the head of the table, Claire at her right hand. "Emma, you're 32 now," Aunt Barbara said loudly. "When are you going to get serious about your career? Your mother built an empire. Claire is following in her footsteps." "I'm content with my work," I said, cutting my turkey carefully. "Content isn't ambitious," Mom interjected. "Emma has always been the cautious one. Safe choices, safe salary, safe little investments. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not the path to real wealth." My cousin Marcus laughed. "Didn't you try to give Mom investment advice once?" That was hilarious. "I was 24, I said evenly. "It was just a suggestion about tech sector diversification." "And I'm glad I ignored it," Mom said, smiling indulgently. "Emma, you read articles and think you understand institutional investment. It's sweet, really, but there's a difference between playing with a few $1,000s and managing real capital." Claire leaned forward. "Mom, should we tell them about the acquisition talks?" Mom beamed. "Sterling Consulting has attracted attention from 2 major firms interested in acquisition. We're looking at valuations between $200 and $240 million. The table erupted in congratulations. I continued eating. "The key to our success," Mom continued, directing her words at me, "has been understanding leverage, understanding growth capital, understanding when to take calculated risks. These aren't things you learn from online trading apps, Emma." I'm sure you're right, Mom, I said. Stop pretending to understand investments. Mom laughed and several relatives joined in. It's honestly a bit embarrassing when you try to talk finance at these gatherings. We all love you, but maybe stick to topics you actually know. Claire added quickly, It's embarrassing, Emma. Last Christmas you tried to explain venture capital to Uncle Tom and he's a retired CFO. You should hear what he said afterward. I smiled politely and said nothing. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my lawyer. Bank president needs to speak with you. Urgent regarding the Sterling investment withdrawal. I told him you're at family dinner, but he insists. I excused myself to the bathroom and called back from Mom's home office. Ms. Emma Chin, the bank president, Robert Morrison, said urgently. I apologize for interrupting your holiday, but we have a significant situation. We received your withdrawal notice for the $95 million Sterling consulting investment. I need to confirm this is your intention. It is, I said calmly. Execute the withdrawal according to the 90-day clause in the investment agreement. I want my capital returned in full with accrued interest. Ms. Chen, you understand this will create substantial difficulties for Sterling Consulting? This represents 73% of their operational capital. Without this funding, they'll face immediate liquidity crisis. Their expansion loans come due in 6 months, and without your backing, their credit lines will likely be called. I understand completely, Mr. Morrison. May I ask what precipitated this decision? Personal reasons. The investment terms allow for withdrawal with 90 days notice. I'm exercising that option. Ms. Chen, perhaps we could arrange a meeting with Mrs. Patricia Chen to discuss. No meetings. Process the withdrawal. Notify Sterling Consulting's board per the investment agreement protocols. That's all. I hung up and returned to dinner. Dessert was being served. Mom's traditional pumpkin pie with hand-whipped cream. The conversation had shifted to Claire's upcoming vacation to the Maldives. Emma, are you traveling anywhere for the holidays? Aunt Barbara asked. I'll probably stay local, I said. Maybe visit some museums. So practical, Mom said, and I couldn't tell if it was a compliment or an insult. Claire is taking her boyfriend to a private resort. 5-star accommodations. That's the lifestyle her position affords. My phone buzzed again. Then Mom's phone rang. She glanced at it, frowned, and silenced it. Business calls even on Thanksgiving. That's the price of success. It rang again immediately. And again. Excuse me, Mom said, stepping away from the table. We could hear her in the next room. Mr. Morrison, this is a family holiday. Unless it's an absolute. What? That's impossible. No, there must be some mistake. The room had gone quiet. Claire's phone started ringing. Then Mom's again. Mom returned to the dining room, her face pale. I need to step out for a moment. Claire, come with me. They disappeared into the office. Through the wall we could hear muffled, urgent voices. The rest of the family exchanged confused glances and continued eating dessert awkwardly. 15 minutes later, Mom and Claire returned. Mom's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide her shock. Everything okay? Uncle Tom asked. Fine, Mom said tightly. Just an unexpected business matter. But her hands were shaking as she picked up her wine glass. Claire looked like she might be sick. My phone buzzed with an email from my lawyer. Bank has notified Sterling Consulting Board of withdrawal. Your $95 million plus $22.8 million accrued interest will be returned within 90 days per agreement terms. Sterling's CEO, your mother, has been informed of timeline and implications. The dinner continued with strained conversation. Mom barely spoke. Claire kept glancing at her phone with increasing panic. Finally, as people were preparing to leave, Mom's business partner Gerald arrived unexpectedly at the door. I recognized him from photos. He owned 15% of Sterling Consulting and served as CFO. Patricia, we need to talk immediately, he said, not bothering with pleasantries. The bank just sent over the investment withdrawal documentation. Did you know about this? Gerald, this is Thanksgiving dinner. Your anonymous investor is pulling $95 million. 90 days notice. That's 73% of our operational capital, Patricia. 73%. The expansion loans come due in 6 months. Without that investment backing, our credit lines will be called. We're looking at potential bankruptcy. The remaining family members were now openly staring. Mom's face had gone from pale to gray. There must be some mistake. Our investor has been perfectly satisfied. 8% annual return, completely hands-off. No mistake. Legal withdrawal per the investment agreement. The bank president confirmed it's ironclad. We have 90 days to find replacement capital or start liquidation proceedings. But why? Mom's voice cracked. We've performed exactly as projected. The returns have been consistent. What changed? The bank wouldn't say. The investor operates through multiple LLCs. Complete anonymity was part of the deal, remember? You insisted on it to avoid board complications. Claire spoke up, her voice shaking. Can't we find another investor? Gerald laughed bitterly. In 90 days? For $95 million? With our debt-to-equity ratio? Patricia, we're overextended. You pushed for the aggressive expansion against my advice. We have 17 new offices that aren't profitable yet, staff of 93 that we can't afford without that investment capital. Those acquisition talks. Dead the moment this gets out. Aunt Barbara tried to intervene. Surely this is a conversation for the office. The office is about to cease existing, Gerald snapped. He turned back to Mom. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for Monday morning. We need to discuss immediate damage control, potential layoffs, asset liquidation. This is catastrophic, Patricia. He left as abruptly as he'd arrived. The room was completely silent. Mom stood frozen at the head of her table, surrounded by the remains of Thanksgiving dinner, her perfect hosting evening destroyed. Claire was crying quietly. Uncle Tom cleared his throat. Patricia, I'm sure there's a solution. Everyone should go, Mom said flatly. No. Please. The family evacuated rapidly, gathering coats and bags, murmuring awkward goodbyes. I stood and collected my jacket calmly. Emma, wait, Mom said. I turned. You work in finance. Is there anything, do you know anyone who might? She couldn't finish the sentence. I don't have access to that kind of capital, Mom, I said truthfully. I didn't. It was already invested in her company and I was taking it back. But maybe someone at your firm? Connections? Anyone? My firm handles portfolios in the $50 to $100 million range for high-net-worth individuals, I said. That's the kind of money you need. Maybe I could make some inquiries. Hope flickered across her face. Would you? I know we haven't always appreciated your career, but this is desperate. The business I've built for 24 years could disappear. I'll see what I can do, I said. No promises. I left her standing in her dining room, surrounded by empty plates and the wreckage of her Thanksgiving. Over the next week, my phone remained silent from my family. I knew what was happening through my lawyer's updates. Sterling Consulting's board had met for 7 hours on Monday. They'd approached 4 major investment firms, all of whom declined after reviewing the company's overextended position. 2 smaller firms offered capital at 22% interest rates, loan shark territory that would cripple the business. Gerald had submitted his resignation effective in 90 days. 3 senior employees had quietly begun job hunting. On December 2nd, 9 days after Thanksgiving, Mom finally called me. Emma, I need to ask you something and I need you to be completely honest. Okay. Your firm handles high-net-worth portfolios. Do you know who some of your clients are? Could any of them be my investor? I paused. Mom, client confidentiality is absolute in my industry. I couldn't tell you even if I knew. But you might know. You might have access to that information. Why are you asking? Because someone is destroying my life's work, Emma. Someone who has been my silent partner for 3 years suddenly decided to pull out without warning, without explanation. And I keep thinking about the timing. Right after Thanksgiving dinner, right after... She trailed off. Right after what, Mom? Silence. Then, it's probably nothing. I'm being paranoid. I'm drowning here, Emma. Every scenario ends with bankruptcy. 24 years of work. Gone. 93 employees losing their jobs. My reputation destroyed. And I don't even know why. Have you asked the bank for the investor's reasoning? They say it's personal reasons. Personal reasons. What does that even mean? We delivered every penny of return we promised. The business is solid. We were days away from acquisition offers worth $240 million. Maybe the investor found a better opportunity, I suggested. At 8% annual return? Emma, that's below market rate for growth capital. This investor took below market returns for anonymity and hands-off involvement. That's not normal investor behavior. That's someone with a personal stake. My heart was beating faster, but my voice remained calm. What are you implying? I don't know. I just know that my anonymous investor has been quietly supporting my business for 3 years, asking for nothing, and then suddenly destroys it right after a family dinner where She stopped. Where you what? Nothing. I'm just stressed. I shouldn't have called. If you hear anything through your professional network, please let me know. I'm begging. She hung up. That night my lawyer called. Emma, the bank president contacted me. Your mother has been trying to investigate the investment structure through her own legal channels. She's getting close to the LLC network. She hasn't connected it to you yet, but she might eventually. Let her investigate, I said. The structure is legal and airtight. She's also apparently offering to double the return rate if the investor stays. 16% annually. Not interested. She's desperate, Emma. I know. On December 10th, Claire called me. We hadn't spoken since Thanksgiving. Emma, Mom is falling apart. She's barely sleeping. The business is imploding. Gerald resigned. We've lost 8 employees. The expansion offices are closing. We might have to file Chapter 11 by February. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. Are you? Because I keep thinking about Thanksgiving dinner. About what Mom said to you about investments. And then 9 hours later her investor pulls out. That's quite a coincidence. It is a coincidence, I said calmly. Is it? Because I've been doing some research. Anonymous investors who take below market returns? That's unusual, Emma. That suggests a personal motivation, not a financial one. Are you accusing me of something, Claire? I'm saying it's weird. I'm saying the timing is suspicious. I'm saying you work in exactly this industry and you've been. She paused. You've been really quiet about your career success. Really modest. Mom always thought it was because you weren't doing that well, but what if we were wrong? I make $160,000 a year as a senior analyst. That's good money, but it's not $95 million investor money. Unless you've been saving. Unless you've been investing wisely for a decade. Unless you're much more successful than you let on. That's quite a theory, Claire. So it's not true? I'm not Mom's mysterious investor. This was technically accurate. I wasn't anymore. I'd withdrawn. But you could find out who is. No. Won't you mean? Can't and won't. Client confidentiality is absolute. Even to save Mom's business? Even to save 93 people's jobs. I don't have the information you're looking for, Claire. I'm sorry. She hung up on me. On December 15th, my investment firm's managing director called me into her office. Margaret E. had been my mentor for 6 years. Emma, I received an unusual inquiry. A woman named Patricia Chin contacted our firm claiming her daughter works here and might have information about an anonymous investor. She wanted to know if we manage any portfolios in the $95 million range that might be invested in Sterling Consulting Group. What did you tell her? That we don't discuss client information under any circumstances. But Emma, I know about your family situation. I also know about your investment portfolio because it's extraordinary for someone your age. When you told me 8 years ago that you'd made your first million, I was impressed. When you showed me your 10-year strategy, I was astonished. Margaret, I don't need to know if you're Sterling Consulting's investor. That's your business. But I do need to know if this situation is going to become professionally complicated. It won't. The investment withdrawal is legal and properly structured. My family doesn't know about my portfolio. I'd prefer to keep it that way. She studied me for a long moment. You know, there's a particular kind of pain that comes from family not seeing you for who you are. Not recognizing your capabilities. Is there? I watched my father dismiss my business success for 30 years because he thought women should be teachers or nurses. When I finally bought the building his restaurant operated in and became his landlord, the look on his face was... She shook her head. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But I will say that sometimes the people who should see us most clearly are the most blind. Thank you, Margaret. On December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, The bank president called me directly. Miss Chen, I'm violating several protocols by making this call, but I feel ethically obligated. Your mother has been in my office 3 times this week. She's trying everything to find out who you are. Excuse me, who the investor is. She's offering to personally guarantee future returns, to give board seats, to restructure the entire company. She's willing to do anything. My withdrawal stands, Mr. Morrison. She's going to lose everything. Sterling Consulting will file bankruptcy by February. 93 employees will lose their jobs. 24 years of work will disappear. I understand the consequences. May I ask why? And please understand I'm asking as someone who has watched this situation unfold with considerable concern. The financial terms were generous. Sterling Consulting performed well. What changed? Mr. Morrison, when I structured this investment 3 years ago, I did it to save a business that I believed in. I did it anonymously because I didn't want credit or recognition. I wanted to help. For 3 years, I've watched that business thrive on my capital while being told repeatedly that I don't understand investments, that I'm an embarrassment when I discuss finance, that I should stop pretending to know about business. He was quiet for a moment. Your mother doesn't know it's you. No. And you're not going to tell her. No. Miss Chen, if I may speak frankly, this seems punitive. It's educational, Mr. Morrison. For 3 years, I provided 73% of my mother's operational capital while being dismissed as a financial amateur. I've been the foundation of her success while being treated as her greatest disappointment. I don't want revenge. I want honesty. I want to see what happens when the real dynamics become clear. She'll lose everything. She'll lose the business built on capital she didn't respect. That seems appropriate. And the 93 employees? This was the part that had kept me up at night. I've established a severance fund through a separate LLC. When Sterling Consulting fails, there will be resources available for employee transitions. They won't be abandoned. But Mom needs to understand what she actually built versus what she thinks she built. I see. He paused. For what it's worth, Ms. Chen, your investment structure was brilliant. The LLC network, the anonymity protocols, the withdrawal clauses, some of the cleanest work I've seen. You're clearly far more sophisticated than your family realizes. Thank you. Though I suspect they're about to find out. He hung up. Christmas Eve, Mom called. Her voice was hollow, exhausted. Emma, I need you to come over tomorrow for Christmas. Please. I know I haven't been. She couldn't finish. I'll be there, I said. Christmas morning was somber. Just Mom, Claire, and me in the living room that had hosted 42 people a month earlier. No catered feast, no elaborate decorations. Mom looked like she'd aged 10 years. I'm filing bankruptcy on January 3rd, Mom said without preamble. Gerald's already gone. We're down to 42 employees. The expansion offices are closed. We have enough capital to operate through February if we're lucky. Claire was crying quietly. I sat in silence. 24 years, Mom said. I built Sterling Consulting from nothing. 1 client, 1 contract. I grew it into a multi-million-dollar firm. And now it's gone because some anonymous investor I never met decided to destroy me. You don't know their reasons, I said quietly. I know the timing. Right after Thanksgiving. Right after a family dinner where she stopped looking at me. Emma, I need to ask you something and I need you to tell me the truth. Okay. At dinner I said some things about your career. About your understanding of investments. I was dismissive. She closed her eyes. I was cruel. I've been thinking about it for a month. And I keep wondering if somehow, some way that got back to my investor. If maybe you mentioned it to someone at your firm and they told someone and it reached. Mom, I didn't tell anyone at my firm about Thanksgiving dinner. This was true. I told my lawyer, not my firm. But you think I deserved this? It wasn't a question. I met her eyes. I think you built a successful business with help you didn't acknowledge. I think you've spent years telling me I don't understand finance while making decisions that required exactly the kind of capital I work with daily. I think you've confused titles and revenue with actual financial acumen. What are you saying? I'm saying that when you needed $95 million 3 years ago, you found an investor willing to provide it at below-market returns with complete anonymity. That investor asked for nothing except consistent returns. No board seat, no public credit, no recognition. Just the satisfaction of knowing they'd helped build something valuable. Mom was staring at me now, her face pale. And for 3 years that investor watched you succeed. Watched you expand. Watched you take credit for a turnaround you couldn't have achieved alone. And maybe that was fine. Maybe that investor was happy just knowing they'd helped. Until they weren't anymore. Emma. You asked me at Thanksgiving if I understood investments, Mom. Let me tell you what I understand. I understand that capital is power. I understand that the person providing 73% of operational funding is actually the foundation of the business, not an anonymous bystander. I understand that respect should go to the people who make success possible, not just the people who take credit for it. Claire gasped. Oh my God. You're the investor. I corrected. I withdrew my investment per the legal terms of the agreement. 90 days notice. You have until March 2nd to return my $95 million plus $22.8 million in accrued interest. Mom looked like I'd physically struck her. That's impossible. You can't have that kind of money. You're a senior analyst making. I'm a senior analyst managing several portfolios in the $50 to $100 million range who also happens to have built her own portfolio over the last decade through careful investing. I graduated top of my Wharton class at 22, Mom. I made my first million at 25. I've been managing 8-figure investments since I was 27. I currently oversee approximately $180 million in personal and client assets. But you never said, you never told us. Would you have believed me? Every time I tried to discuss finance, you dismissed me. Every time I offered business advice, you laughed. You thought I was playing with online trading apps while I was actually building the capital base that saved your company. You did this to hurt me, Mom whispered. I did this to save you 3 years ago. I'm ending it now because I'm tired of being invisible while providing the foundation for your visibility. You spent Thanksgiving dinner telling me I was an embarrassment for discussing investments while literally sitting on capital I provided. The irony became unbearable. The 93 employees losing their jobs, that's on you now. No, Mom. That's on you. You overextended your business. You took aggressive expansion risks without adequate capital reserves. You assumed your anonymous investor would always be there without ever questioning why someone would take below-market returns. You built on a foundation you didn't understand or respect. I don't have $117.8 million to pay you back. You know that. You have 90 days to liquidate assets. Sell the expansion offices. Sell the equipment. Downsize to sustainable operations. Maybe you can rebuild something smaller, something actually within your capital means. Or maybe you'll start over from scratch like you did 24 years ago. Either way, you'll do it understanding what you actually built versus what you thought you built. Claire was sobbing now. Mom just stared at me. You're destroying my life's work. I'm withdrawing my support from work that was built on my capital and your dismissal of my capabilities. There's a difference. You want me to beg? Fine. I'm begging. Emma, please. I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything. I see that now. Please don't do this. I'll tell everyone what you did. I'll give you public credit. Board seat. Partnership. Whatever you want. I wanted respect, Mom. Not as a condition of saving your business, but as a baseline acknowledgement of my competence. You couldn't provide that for 3 years. You can't purchase it now with desperate promises. So what happens? You just walk away and watch everything collapse. I've established a severance fund for your employees. They'll be taken care of. You'll have to figure out your own path. On January 3rd, I'm filing bankruptcy. Sterling Consulting will cease to exist. My reputation will be destroyed. I'll lose the house, the cars, everything. Then you'll understand what it's like to be dismissed and underestimated. Maybe that's valuable education. I stood to leave. Mom grabbed my arm. Emma, please. I'm your mother. I love you. I'm sorry for every dismissive word, every time I didn't take you seriously. Please don't do this. I gently removed her hand. 3 years ago I gave you $95 million to save your business because I loved you and believed in you. You never knew it was me. You spent those 3 years taking credit for a turnaround you couldn't have achieved alone while telling me I didn't understand money. That investment of love and capital? I'm withdrawing it. You have 90 days. I walked out of the house I'd grown up in, leaving my mother and sister in the wreckage of a Christmas morning that had revealed everything they'd been too blind to see. The money would return to my accounts in March. Sterling Consulting would declare bankruptcy in January. Mom would lose the business she thought she'd built through her own brilliance. And I would continue managing my $180 million portfolio from my modest apartment, driving my 10-year-old Honda, being invisible to people who'd never thought to look closely enough to see what I actually was. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop supporting people who never valued your support in the first place. I didn't destroy my mother's business. I just stopped pretending she'd built it alone.